Welcome to another episode of the Durham Devils Club podcast, and we're bringing you an off-season episode. And boy, we couldn't think of a better guest to bring on for the off-season than the newest Duke football head coach. One Manny Diaz is joining us. Coach, we know you've been busy. It's been a busy month since you were named coach. First off, how you been? How have things been going? Have you transitioned you and the family well to Durham so far?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. We are transitioning well. As from a family standpoint, my youngest son, we're very excited as an early decision admittee to Duke. But of course, that means he's got to finish out his 12th grade year. So my wife and he are hanging out up in State College. So whatever we think about the weather here, it's way worse there. So I don't have a chance to complain. But they're getting back and forth. They're very excited about, our move down here, and the chance to really put some roots down and really build this thing the right way.
Is your son, someone had mentioned, is he a golfer?
Yeah, he is. He loves golf. And in fact, on his recruiting trip to Duke last summer, they stayed at the Duke and got to go out on the course and play. And about 4 holes in, just the skies open. It was just a monsoon, and that was it. And it just shows you never know what is going to be on a recruiting visit. But he still decided after that weekend that Duke was his number one choice, and that's why he had made a decision to go ED, and we're super excited to get in. And we actually did. I think last Sunday I had a couple hours of nothing to do, and it was sunny and in the 50s, so we went out there and played 9 holes.
So will it be walk on for football in the fall and then golf in the spring?
Oh, yeah. He's gonna be walking around that campus getting good grades is what he's gonna be doing.
Yeah,
so
there you go. Some of the graduates, Graham Barton, one of the players from last year's team, a couple of guys on that golf course, evidently, this is for you to find out, around one of the holes, there's a private pond that no one really knows about, and evidently there's some really good fish in there. So I don't know. We've just heard that. We don't know what hole it is. We know some of the guys on last year's team, they made that a fishing experience as well. So, yeah.
I know there's one pond that there's a few golf balls in that I may be responsible for. So they might have come out with a title list. I want to make sure if they did, they can return it to the office.
Nice. Hey,
nice.
I can understand that, Coach. I'm a golfer myself, so you hate to lose the good golf balls for sure.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're in the off season, as I stated in the opener, and obviously with the off season comes recruiting. How have things been so far? Not asking for any details, can't give any details, obviously. But you've been a month in. How's the response been from some of the recruits overall as you've hit the recruiting trail so far?
It's been exciting. First of all, to have the 16 that signed with us in the December date, and hopefully the 17th will sign for us in February. That's very encouraging, very exciting. And I'll tell you, you want to talk about the Duke brand. One thing we can discuss is, if you look what's happening across the country and some pretty high profile coach retirements and changing and just everyone just scurrying everywhere. And you're always going to lose somebody when there's a coaching turnover, but it shows you the power of Duke. How many of these kids understood what they were signing up for and how strong this university is. So that was very, very encouraging. Now being on the road, we've really have basically completed our first full day on the road, our full week on the road. And it's funny, we just came out of a staff meeting and the coaches, to a man, the brand is strong out there. The schools that we're going into, whether it's the coaches, whether it's the recruits themselves, people are excited about what Duke means, and that's really encouraging for us. And we're really excited about where we stand in this time and place in college football. And recruiting is your lifeline, and you better have a way that stands out. You better have something that sets you apart. You better have something we're recruiting is sales, right? And the best way to sell something is having an elite product to sell. And I think our staff feels that we have that here at Duke.
And kind of related to recruiting, Coach, I want, like twin brothers with it is the transfer portal. And, obviously the program's been active in the transfer portal this offseason. Probably going to be more active, I'm assuming, before it's all said and done. But there have been a couple of players who, their names were in the portal and they've decided to come back. Jacques Moore, Jalen Stinson, Ryan Smith. people like that. How important is it for those guys? Obviously they have that freedom, right? And player empowerment, all that. How important is it for this program to have those guys, veteran guys, decide, hey, well, I'm going to stick around instead of going elsewhere?
It's huge. It's so massive because again, you see, it's not necessarily the norm right now in college football. And again, I think that's about Duke. And it's about this locker room. Everybody knows that there's a great culture in this locker room. That's part of the reason why I came here, because I had inside information of what what the team was like. And do you look, at the end of the day, it's about your teammates, right? And are these the men that you want to go to war with? And and I think the fact that these guys recognize what we have there, because I told them, look, what's over there, what's over, that ridge, from a distance, it may look pretty decent, but when you get inside, they may not be the right type of people. And I think that's a part you never really understand. You don't ever really know somebody else's culture until you're on the inside. And one of my messages to the team was about understanding that we're unique here. We're different. We are high achievers in all things that we do. And you get in a locker room, it's all in college. And all of a sudden you get in a locker room and there's a bunch of, as I call them, normals, and average Joes in there that you haven't been around. You're not used to that. That's going to be stunning. And guys who don't really care, guys who are okay being mediocre and okay being average. From my experience, high achievers don't like hanging around with average people. And you see it. Well, God, why this team, they have all these high star recruits and this, that, and the other, and they don't seem to win like they should. I wonder why that is. Normally that speaks to something that's going on in that locker room that's not quite right. And that's kind of the buyer beware thing in this era of the portal.
And it's funny that you mentioned the star system. That's something that we don't put a lot of hype into, because as you've seen, you could have a team of 3-star, 2- and 3-star teams, and they just blow it out of the water. Meanwhile, you've got 4- and 5-star recruits who are either struggling in the system that they have, or they take their ball essentially and go to a different court to play, or another team. But it just seems like with every change that has happened recently with this program, guys have been more motivated to show their talents instead of saying, you know what, this isn't for me. As to Josh's point, I'm going to leave. They've said, you know what, I'm going to give it a chance. So, I mean, how's the reception been? Obviously, you coming in, Duke's in a lot better place than it was with the last coaching change. But how's the reception been from the guys so far? Obviously, David Feely has been kind of like the glue or the bridge to bring you and the team together. But so far, everyone on board, everyone putting in 110%.
Yeah, I think so. And let me before I answer that, I want to go back to the first part of your question when you talk about the star system. We've already discussed as a staff that we will never look at lists. We will never look at stars. I don't know what we had a bunch of great players in this past weekend. Unofficially to go to the basketball game. I don't have any idea what they're ranked. I don't care. We're going to trust our evaluation. At Duke, we're going to win with our kind of guys. And that's all that matters. And if, there's been all kinds of data and studies done about the stars and what they matter and they don't. And you can prove whatever narrative you want to, but the thing that tells on the star system more than anything right now is a transfer portal. And there's all kinds of players coming from schools that no one's ever heard of. That are stepping up in competition and making massive impacts. Our starting center last year at Penn State was from Cornell. What did the stars say about him coming out of high school? And there was a lot of stories on the guys on Duke the last couple of years. So that's the biggest tell on the misevaluation. Yeah, look, it's not hard to pick out who the 5-star is. It's not hard to pick out the kid in high school that's 6'5", whatever. And that type of thing. And yes, very often those guys do go on to the top of the draft because they're so unique. But like we know in most things in life, the people in the middle of sort of the bell curve, there's a lot less variance in that group than what we think. And making sure that we're evaluating the right type of guys that are here for the right type of reason, I think is important. Which now goes to the second part of your question, which is the buy-in from the team. I think that is where the David Feely connection is so vital. One of the hardest things I was having a conversation with one of our players, I guess yesterday. We were, Dave does a great thing. You might have seen on social media, he calls it the brunch bells. The guys come in voluntarily on Saturday mornings. I think we had the largest one we've ever had in the time that Dave's been here in the 2+ years. 90% of our team came through Saturday voluntarily just to be with one another. And that's actually one thing that they mentioned. They just really missed the fellowship and the company. You can't lift the whole team at once. There's not enough room in any weight room in America. And so, you'll have three different weight groups. And so these guys, when they come back, they really haven't even seen a lot of their teammates since the bowl game. So now let me push that back to myself and our new staff. I get hired, I think it was December 9th, but you're really, you've got this other staff, they're finishing the bowl game. You're still kind of on the sidelines, right? And then you go into Christmas vacation, then we start school. And so by the time I spoke in front of our team, the first day I got hired. I didn't get in front of those guys again. It was 1 month later. It was December 9th to January 9th. That's 30 days where you're the head coach, but are you really? I mean, dude, are you really connecting with your players? And then here's the thing, you speak to them and then they go to class and guess what we get to do? Bang, we're on the road recruiting. So you still really almost don't feel like you have a chance to really, really connect in a personal way until we get done with this recruiting at the end of January. It's just remarkable to think. Now think about that now. I get hired, whatever it is, December 9th. They're without a coach since Thanksgiving weekend. And they don't really have almost all of December and almost all of January. They don't really have their staff boots on the ground. And keep in mind, that's not a Duke problem. That's the same thing that's going on in Alabama and in Washington and all these other places where there's been staff turnover. So it's just a weird little, reality of any time there's a turnover. And that's why I give our players a ton of credit, that they've held firm and stayed committed to what we're building here as a program. And then that's why, again, to circle back, that's why David Feely's the man. You know what I mean? Because having that familiarity where they just went back to work, they know what defines them, they know what makes us successful. Every player that sat in this office the first day I was on the job and I met with about 20 guys one-on-one, they said, "Coach, we win because of David Feely." And so guess what? Guess what you get? You're back in January. I may be gone, but guess what you're getting? You're getting a face full of David Feely, and that makes me feel good about makes me sleep easy at night.
Yeah. Speaking of David Feely, obviously he was with you at Miami, so you guys are old friends. You've already mentioned, I know, in your introductory press conference, he was able to give you kind of that inside peek and say, "Listen, this locker room is different," right? And we love that. So what happened this past season, heading into the Duke Miami game? I think it was last year. There was some YouTube guy who's like covers Miami Hurricanes football or whatever, and he was talking before the game, and he had his thing up, and someone found it online, but he was talking about how, man, they're so excited about David Feely. He's like, David Feely doesn't do anything but make Instagram models. So that was the thing. He said he creates Instagram models, not football players, or something like that. And so the players kind of got a hold of that, like somehow they saw it, and so after the game, Duke wins the game, and after the game, like it was the thing, right? The players were like Instagram models and all this stuff. So let me ask you this question, David Feely: football players, Instagram models, or the best of both? What does he create in that weight room?
The world does not need more Instagram. I'll tell you from afar, watching Duke the last couple of years. And obviously the staff did a phenomenal job. I mean, you can't take away, but I felt like I was watching David Feely's team. I mean, you could just see the toughness they played with, the energy, the passion, the pop. It was a sight to see. And the players know. The players always know. And that's the credit to what he does down there and his staff. And then you get around the right type of guys that we have in this locker room. I think it's just a perfect match.
It's funny you say that real quick. I'm sorry, Brian. It's funny you say that the players know. You're right on that. And they were very vocal, and they have been since day one when Feely showed up and started that change. I mean, we talked to Dwayne Carter, who had been in this system for years, and Feely comes in and he was like, "Oh no." Like, you know what I mean? Like, here we go. Like, and it was like that reset, that needed to happen. And so that you're exactly right. The players know it. And they were very vocal about it. I believe they were very vocal during the transition. I believe they were very vocal throughout this whole thing that, while they respected everything that the other coaches and the coaching staff did, like Feely was almost that secret sauce that was kind of the guy that was bringing everything together. And so pretty incredible for him, for sure. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
No, you took the words right out of my mouth, because it was kind of like a love-hate. We love the guy, but we hate his workouts in the off season, because David would always put them up and give me everything you've got, and then you're going to give me a little bit more, to where I think it was Dwayne Josh that was saying when they played Clemson the first game of the year, they got to the fourth quarter, Clemson guys were gassed, and the D line was just like, we can do this all night, guys. You just let us know. So keeping David Feely, retaining David Feely, I think was one thing that this fan base loved the most, because to your point, Coach, it was his team, because it started with him, it kind of ended with him as far as off-season workouts to the end of the year, to make sure that the team stamina endurance level was there. And I mean, results have been here for the last 2 years, and I think I speak for all Duke fans when we're excited to see what else can happen moving forward under your regime as well.
We saw it, when we were at Miami, we'd watch the other team throw up on our field, especially now, you pick up the tempo on offense a little bit. And I remember there was one game, I think we were playing Virginia, and it was the break between the third and fourth quarter, and one of their guys was ralphing all over the field, and the players know it. They're like, we got him, because we got our thrown up in, and we got that done in the summertime. You know what I mean? So you do it in the summer, you don't have to worry about it in the fall, and that's such a big part of it. But there's an important thing too. It's funny when you think about the Instagram model thing. The most important thing that he trains is the mind. And you mentioned in terms of the difference and where this program is in terms of the last coaching turnaround. The biggest difference is it was with the mind of how we think about ourselves, and a lot of times that's the hardest thing Oregon to train. I mean, look, it's not strength training. Look, if you do an exercise over and over with resistance, that muscle will grow. I mean, science is pretty solid on that. Getting people to think like winners. And to think like closers and finishers, that's a very, very different thing. And, people love to, Hollywoodize coaches and what they say. And like, as if there's gonna be some head coach giving some, amazing speech, and the team knocks down the locker room door and goes but let me tell you, it's your habits that you see during the course of the season. And that's what's getting trained every day. And that's why, not just at Duke, any program that has any type of success, there's got to be somebody in that weight room that's programming those guys, not just physically, but more importantly, mentally.
So, Coach, this is off script from where we were heading, but I want to like kind of pinpoint something you were just speaking to, and that is the mentality, right? And that mentality starts from your position as the head coach and the CEO of the organization. It flows down through the coaching staff to the team. But there's been, the history of Duke football, okay, like the pre-David Cutcliffe era, and then towards the end of the David Cutcliffe era, and there became in the fan base is where I'm headed here. There became such a woe is me, and we know something bad's about to happen, right? I don't care how good it is, something bad is about to happen. And how important is it we're speaking to some to Durham Devils Club subscribers. These are fans of the team. Some of them, are heavily invested even in the team. But how can the fan base, kind of pick up on that? This is not the 0-11 Duke football team, and they're not going back there. This is not what it takes. How can the fan base kind of jump on board with this kind of new mentality of this is the new Duke football, and we're not going back where we came from?
Well, that's a great question. And I would tell you, any coach, when asked that question in any era, would sit there and say, well, because of all these great things that we're going to implement, and all these great things, and my great offense and my great defense, and so on and so forth. And I can say that, and I do believe that. That's not the most important thing, especially to the people on this call. It is obvious that college football is changing right before our eyes. Okay. What it was 2 years ago, it has astounded me, from my time of being head coach at Miami, how different the job is in just 36 months. Okay. Which no one knows 36 months from now what it's going to look like, other than the fact that it's going to be different than it is right now. Okay. So what Duke did in 2002 or 2008 or 2012, to me, is so outdated, because it doesn't matter what anybody did in those times, because the whole rules have changed. And in my opinion, and in our staff's opinion, the more we've talked about it in the first 6 weeks we've been on the job, in my mind, it completely benefits Duke. Completely. And I think everybody has to understand that, like what's going on right now and what we have the chance to seize upon. Look, a lot of people listening to this, probably got to where they got to because they understood what the weather was going on outside, and they were able to position their company or their business or their whatever at the right time. You know what I mean? Because timing is so important in anything. So let's talk about what I mean by that. Okay, so let's talk about the transfer portal, for example. Okay, you're seeing it; it's ripping through every team. How could the University of Alabama be vulnerable to the portal? Right? All of a sudden, Saban leaves. That's okay. We're going to hire a coach that comes from the runner-up. We'll be fine. No, dang, kids flying all over the place, right? Okay. What separates us at Duke? What makes us unique? Okay. The players we get the players that we get to recruit, and I use that term very strongly for emphasis, that we are allowed to recruit. They understand the value of what it means to graduate from Duke. So I was sitting in a prospect's house this past Thursday, who I think is going to be a National Football League player. And I'm pretty optimistic that he's going to sign with us soon. And I'm looking at him, and all I'm saying is 4 years. We get that guy to sign. We've got that guy for 4 years because that's a Duke family, and they understand how important it is to graduate from Duke. I don't know how many other college football coaches anywhere can say that about any player that they signed. Because if the number one safety in the country who just signed with Bama and started every game as a true freshman would walk out of the University of Alabama with all their tradition, then nobody's safe. And I'm not saying, I'm not going to be completely naive and say we're 100% safe from that. But I think we're more safe than anybody. So in a weird way, I think we're better trained or better poised to retain our talent than anyone in the country. Now, what's the next piece to that? That's where NIL comes in as well. And to make our players feel valued, to make them feel that Duke, that understanding that of all the things that Duke can do for them long term, and they all get it and they all understand. But in the short term, to make sure that they still feel value in a way that they are taking care of us with what they're doing on the field. And we show that we are looking after them and we're taking care of our own as well. And that is a great relationship to have. And then the last element is that, now talking back to the portal, is how attractive we are to graduate students to come in, okay, and to get a graduate degree in a 1-year program for Duke. So to me, we want to be a developmental program. We want to sign great high school players every year who are committed to come to Duke, to graduate from Duke, and to win a lot of games because we can develop those guys. This is where I get back to now. Yes, the offensive and defensive schemes, David Philly will do his magic, and we can have a really good foundational football team. But now to be able to attract from the outside in, a transfer offensive lineman from an Ivy League school or a transfer linebacker from an Ivy League school, these type of guys to maybe fill in some holes, that didn't exist. Duke had a very, very senior-laden team a year ago. And the way things would have gone in your what I would call something bad is about to happen story. I got to stop using air quotes. There's something bad is about to happen story. Okay. Because yes, you know what? The way the college football was 15 years ago, that would have been how you win at Duke. How you won at Duke is you've had an old quarterback, an old team on both lines of scrimmage. And yeah, you would have had a heck of a season. And then what happened? The quarterback would have walked out the door and you would have been decimated on both lines of scrimmage. And it would take 3 to 4 years. Those positions are hard to fill. They're hard to develop. And it's taken 3-4 years to fill, and you would have backslid, and you'd have to try to climb back up the mountain again. And maybe in 3 to 4, 5, 6 years, you have another one of those special type years, and then you kind of slide back down. That was sort of that gravitational pull. Okay. Well, now, you have a chance where you have an old quarterback leave. Well, Malik Murphy comes in. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that is very important. We get to do that. When I say we, everyone associated with Duke, we get to attract Malik Murphy. The school for sure, the opportunity from football for sure, but everyone coming together is what makes Malik Murphy make the final decision to come to Duke. And now he gets to compete with the returning quarterbacks that we have. And we feel between those guys that we are really, really going to be in a great place in the quarterback position. We get to do the same thing with our offensive line. We get to bring in some more defensive linemen. And so what we get to do is we get to fight that gravitational pull that so often would have backslid. Not just Duke, but a lot of programs felt the same way. So I'm wired differently. And it's funny, I've always kind of used this on the sidelines during games. of just running around saying something good is about to happen. I'm an optimist by nature, and something good is about to happen. And just switching that mindset that something bad is about to happen or something good. And the last thing I'll say on this point is we're not just sitting in the stands hoping. We all get to get into this game. And that has never been the case before, right? Yeah. Well, boy, I hope this Diaz fellow does a nice job and gets the right type of guys. But now to me, look, you win with alignment. It's everybody all in. That's what it's all about. From the president, from the AD, our administration and the university, our administration and the athletic department, when everybody's all in for football to be excellent, and understand that Duke should not hold football to one standard and its medical hospital to another standard. You know, I sat there, I looked at Malik in a team meeting, and I said, when they went, Malik had a little procedure. I said, did they do it all the way right, or did they do it, 60% right? Oh no, it was all the way right. Oh, okay. So you would demand that our medical treatment be done at the highest level. Well, then everything should be done at the highest level. Why would we ever choose? We want high achievers in the classroom. Why would we want high achievers athletically? Why don't we want that standard to encompass everything that we do, knowing that it's hard to reach, but that's still our North Star, because anything else is just settling. But man, let's just settle for being mediocre. Well, then if we settle in that, then we'll settle in everything we do. So I think the feeling that I've gotten from everybody associated with this university and how everybody really understands the timing is right now, and everyone can feel part of the game. Everyone's part of this team. And so when you watch Duke play this fall, it's like watching all of us play them. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, well, here's just this, whoever's in the Yo building. It's not just what's in the Yo building now. It's everybody that touches Duke Athletic. It's everyone that touches Duke University.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because as Josh said, we as lifelong Duke fans had the what's going to happen next in a negative way. These last two years have been kind of what you were saying, Coach. Like, hey, yeah, we're down. Hey, there's a chance we might lose, but something good's going to come out of that. The Clemson game was like that. Notre Dame game should have been that, but we won't go talking about the past too much. But you've been talking about NIL, so we'll kind of stay on this topic. NIL kind of was bred and born during your time at Penn State. Last time you were a head coach was in Miami, and it wasn't like that. Now you're back as a head coach here at Duke. I mean, what have been your overall thoughts so far as NIL is continuing to grow, both at your time as Penn State and now your time at Duke? You kind of alluded to it a little bit, but overall, have there been any challenges per se so far with NIL while you're at Duke?
Biggest challenge is, number one, again, as a college football overall, we're doing what we always do, right? The airplane's already in flight and we're learning how to build it. You know what I mean? And so it's going to be, there's a lot of turbulence. And the rules change every year. And so people sometimes don't understand the rules. They don't understand what DDC does. They don't understand, because it's all happening in real time. But the urgency is happening in real time as well. Even at Penn State, and this is true at a lot of places. Usually, the head coach is the one that handles it, and a lot of the assistants are kind of in the dark. And that's why, to your point, even just, a couple years ago at Miami, this really wasn't where we were at. And so it's a big part of being the head coach right now. And look, we don't want to run a program that attracts people here because of financial, benefits. That's not what we're going to build. Again, our brand is always going to be excellence in all things, and academics is always going to be the guiding light on that. But we can also do that, okay, and be competitive in the NIL space. And especially because sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes the numbers we're talking about, again, when we're our age, you're like, well, that's not really a difference. But when you're 20 years old or whatever, and the ego doesn't understand, that's what it is. It's sometimes, someone explained to me now, the dollars are the new stars for the kids. The kids like, saying, hey, I'm a 4-star, I'm a 3-star, I'm a whatever ranked player. Now it's like, hey, if I'm getting this and you're getting this -10, then I must be 10 better, and that's, look, as we all know, market economics, we're all worth what somebody's willing to pay you. So it has its challenges, because you're teaching these young men now what the free market is and what it's about. So we have to make some decisions, in terms of how we value guys, you got to go to an NFL type model of how you value certain positions. And you've got to make a choice. We're not going to be, we're never going to be wasteful. You can't do that. It's just not prudent. And we want, we want our players to believe that we will always take care of the guys who earn it. No different than it is in the NFL. The best guys get paid more than the other guys. And, college ball was everybody gets the same. That's what it was forever, never, never, never. And like I said, in like this, those days were gone. So whatever happened before that changed, all that era, that book should be closed, and we're in a new era now going forward. So whatever was, whatever can be, it's now, the rules have all been rewritten. So we are not beholden to our past. As if the university, again, if I use Alabama as an example, if Alabama can be just rocked by 25 kids jumping in the portal in one day, then we know that what was has nothing to do with what will be. So what an exciting time to be anywhere.
Coach, you mentioned in regards to NIL, you mentioned the NFL, and obviously they've had decades to perfect free agency and salary caps and all of the different nuances that come with that. And the college game, there really isn't that, right? So, in the NFL, you have, I guess, the balance of like, yeah, you sign this contract, but X amount of it is non-guaranteed, right? X amount of it is based on performance. It's based on measurables, whatever they may be. There's nothing really like that, I don't believe, and you could speak to this in the college game. And is that a challenge, right? You give a guy up front, basically, like, here's what we're going to be able to do for you. And then you've got other guys maybe that didn't get that, and then things play out in the field differently. Is that a potential challenge as a head coach? It's like, hey, listen, we put a lot of stock into a certain guy, but he's getting outplayed and or there's injuries. How does that all work? Just honestly, just kind of a frank question.
Yeah, no, Josh, it's a great question. Because there are no guidelines. It's not like the NFL, because in the NFL, at least when you have them under contract, you have them for an X amount of time. And obviously what's hard on our game now is you're having all these kids, hop in the portal at the mid-year, which is wrecking all the bowl games, and you're just seeing all this disruption to our sport. So it's tough, right? And then look, in the pros, there is a cap, so there's somewhat of the idea of fitting within a market. This is, to me, what I'm about to say, Josh, is a really, really important point for you guys and for anybody listening. It is important to recognize two things that are both true at once. One, okay, the financial structure of NIL, it doesn't make business sense, okay? But two, if we wait for it to make business sense, we will be left so far behind that we will lose our opportunity to be at the big boy table in whatever's coming in college football. Now, will it start to make sense this summer with some regulation? It could be at any moment. But what's very difficult in my conversation with people around the program, and I get it, and I'm the first one to admit, it's a non-sustainable model as it stands today. So there's a lot of incentive for very wise people to say, I'm going to stay on the sideline until it makes sense. Because look, I'm too smart. I made too much money doing it the right way, and I'm too keen from a business standpoint to jump into the space. And I get it completely. I get that as a 100% rational thought. But hey, when has sports ever been rational, right? And that's why, look, if this was our model and this had to sustain for the next 20 years, I'm not going to waste my time and treasure on that. We may be talking about 18 months. You've already heard the president of the NCAA talk about maybe there's going to be a new level of Division I. And the question is this: I believe one of these two things is going to be the pathway. It's going to happen by invite or intent. So let's unpack what those two things mean. Invite means that whether it's a league, whatever, when the earthquake breaks, and I think everyone knows the earthquake is coming in college football, that you're going to need a league to invite you. Okay, well, if you need to be invited, you need to be, poised to be in a very successful place in your program to earn that invite. There's a lot of things that are very, very attractive about Duke to any conference, but you're not going to want to have a poor football team when the earthquake hits. The timing is, and everyone knows could be 18 months away, 2 years away, 3. It's coming. If it's not by invite, and if it goes maybe more to what the NCAA president said, it's going to be by intent. And the intent is that the shift in terms of compensating the players will go from external sources to internal sources, means the university will handle that. And if the university is handling that, well, then that changes the entire model. One, because again, when the earthquake happens, there's going to be new TV contracts, the amount of money coming in. Everyone knows that this is coming, right? And so what we've got to do right now is that we've got to build that parachute for Duke football. And maybe that's not even the right model. I mean, maybe really a better model is build that rocket booster for us, okay, over these next 24 months, okay, just to keep us in that level of orbit, right, where we're on that stage where we're attracting college game day and knocking off people that have been knocked off the last couple of years and staying in that stage. And that's why it's so important, Josh. If there's one theme in this conversation, it's so funny to double down on the something bad is about to happen. What we have now is we have the ability to affect the change. And instead of just, sitting in the stands with our arms folded, like, God, I hope this works out. Like we can maximize our ability for it to work out. And that, I sat in Madison Square Garden, okay, for that Duke Baylor game. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it was like 18,000 Duke fans up there. Baylor, I thought, traveled well. There's a couple thousand Baylor fans. And that night in MSG, I walked out with my middle son, who's at Vanderbilt. And I told him, this has to be protected by all costs. By all costs. Because what I witnessed that night was so extraordinary. And I've been around college athletics for more, I've been alive in college athletics more than I've been before I was in college athletics. And I've been at Penn State whiteouts, and I've coached at Texas and Florida State and Miami and SEC. I've been so blessed to do so many different things. And what I saw that night, like, we have got to defend that. Bringing this staff to Cameron last weekend for the first time for that Tech game, those guys all came back. And they're like, that's the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. That must be protected. And the way to protect that is football. And the way to protect that is in the next 24 months. I really feel that urgency. And I think once we get to that, once we get on the right side of the earthquake, now the whole model changes. And it's going to be a whole different thing. And now, like I said, whatever has been in college ball, that chapter closes. And now we're in a whole new space. And what a great place to be at when that happens.
So just to follow up there, and that was incredible. We'll have to call that out. That was really, really, really good. By the way, you're listening to the Durham Devils Club podcast. Thanks for being a supporter, subscriber, and all that good stuff. And you're getting some incredible content right here. But you mentioned, maybe that wise investor, right? The high-end donor is like, hey, I've seen things like this in the past. I'm gonna pause for a second and understanding that wisdom, but also understanding what you just articulated is, if those people will take that jump and take that step and invest in the program right now, the return on that investment, the potential return on that investment for Duke football could be exponential. It could turn into things like, what I feel like NIL maybe should have been from the start is like an actual revenue share with the players, right? Like those TV contracts and those things, they actually start getting, chunks of those things, whatever it turns into. You mentioned in the next 24 months, we have no idea what it turns into, but whatever it does turn into with conference realignment or a completely new system, whatever it is, those guys on the sidelines, what would you say is like, hey, take the step? Like, because if we wait until everything is structured properly, then Duke is so far behind that they can't keep up. So what would you say to those guys or those ladies or whatever it is that say, listen, we've got it, but we're not quite ready to take the jump?
Well, I think what happens is, and look, I am always humbled when anytime anyone is even considering, donating their hard-earned to any aspect of the program, whether that's facility or just general budget or whatever. So, I said with the utmost respect, I think what's hard sometimes with NIL, because it's being so new, is that if I donate to a facility, I can see it. And I can walk by and I say, I see this thing, I did this thing, and this thing, And I think the story that we have to tell, and that I enjoy telling in one-on-one private conversations, is this story is people. right? So when I've had the chance to meet with some people and I tell them stories of, hey, our current player was going here. But you mentioned some of the guys that were in the portal that came back. Remember now, there's a lot of guys that didn't go in the portal. We all know tampering is rampant, right? So just because they're not in the portal doesn't mean that they're not getting bombarded with offers, you know? And so I think when you put a name and a person to the story of what actually, so no different than if I walk by a plaque that has my name or something that I donated, which, and by the way, that's super important and it all matters, right? But when you're watching said player score a touchdown next year, and then maybe you realize, I had a hand in that person, and especially at times in terms of what it took to keep them, or same thing, you know what I mean? And what it turned to maybe acquire a guy that maybe that's the guy that puts us over the edge, and I think that's the point of where we're in right now is changing from passive fandom, right? Where like I come in, I'm going, oh, I hope the team's good this year, you know what I mean? To being able to support it in a way where we can keep our best, and then supplement our best with the best elsewhere. But all with keeping our brand of what Duke is first. You know what I mean? We're going to do it the right way. We're going to have the right type of kids that are about it the right way. We have all those things, but they are getting bombarded. And I think those personal stories of where the NIL goes to, because when we start hearing big numbers and what does this mean? And, again, it can lose what my ROI is, right? I start to lose like, okay, if I just throw all this money into a big pile, I don't know how it's all allocated. And then we start to hear the story of where it goes. I think it makes it more personal, and I think it makes it real.
Make a very valid point. It's something that I don't think we as fans in college sports realize, that NIL brings the fan base closer to the field, the court, than ever before. It's almost like there's always been an invisible barrier between fans and the coaching staff and the players. But to your point, what you're saying, it was just an epiphany for me. All those folks that are donating now to the DDC, other than putting on pads and a helmet for you and getting on the field and calling plays and running schemes, I mean, this is the closest they've been to be able to contribute to the school, to contribute to the team, to help you and your coaching staff get those players to fill those voids. And again, it's just something where we, with our, not so much our influence, but fans that we interact with, they always ask, well, how, what is my money really going to, or, what is the DDC? I think the fans are still a little bit behind, but your explanation with everything, to me as a fan as well, kind of just, okay, now it clicked for me. The money that I give is actually contributing to where, hey, the pin transfer coming in, I help contribute to that. Or Malik Murphy, I help contribute to him coming from Texas to Durham. So I think that was a great explanation, because there are some folks who will see this episode who might still be on the fence as far as contributing to the DDC, go, okay, now I get it. Now I understand how the DDC helps and what exactly it does to help Duke football. So that was a great explanation.
Right, Coach, I think what Brian's telling you is he wants to be one of those big donors. So make sure after we get done with this, we'll make sure we connect you guys.
Let me make one more analogy, because my brain likes to work in analogies and I like telling stories. Okay. What I always say is let's engineer this into a different realm. Okay. So let's talk about the university as a whole. And one of the great things when I was interviewing for the job, and I was reading about President Price, and he's one of his big beliefs was investing in people. So we got this great university, crazy student body, the rigors of getting into the school, it's off the charts, right? You got this amazing faculty, right? Why? Because we attract all these people, right? That's what we do. That's what makes Duke Duke, right? But now let's just say all of a sudden the world changed. And what was happening is all these schools were coming in and they were poaching the best of our best. Let's say all of a sudden all of our top deans or all of our top faculty were getting poached by other schools or the students. So I will tell you, this campus is beautiful. Wow, the buildings, they're remarkable. Everybody comes on campus like, wow, this is like out of a movie set, right? But that's not what makes Duke Duke, right? It's the people, silly, right? It's the people, it's the students, it's the quality of the student that we can attract here. If there was some existential threat to our ability to not just attract those students, but to retain them it would be a call to arms that we would all be all in to defend what Duke is. Now, this is one little tiny part of campus we call the Yo Athletic Center, and that's the exact same thing that's happening right here. So to me, the energy that we would defend, okay, if all of a sudden there was an assault on our medical school, okay, and all of our top people were getting poached away, that would be a major problem that everyone would be called on, and as they should, because that's a property that's worth defending. My point on football is no matter what level that somebody's excited about this sport, you have to believe, and this is what's exciting to me because I know President Price believes this. I know the top people in this university believe this. We're the front porch of this university, and everyone knows right now with what's going on in college athletics, there's no reason why Duke basketball and Duke football and all of Duke athletics, to be honest, can't stand as pillars, okay, that attract people to want to come here just as much as our great academic reputation is. There just happens to be one space right now where this chaos and sort of this battle is being fought that I think it's going to come to resolution within the next 2 years. So that's why, again, how my mind works, if you wanted to protect Duke and what Duke means academically, part of that is protecting Duke football. You know, if you want to protect what Duke basketball is, because it is the best basketball brand to me in the entire country, part of that is protecting Duke football. So I see this as a global enterprise to protect our most valuable resource, which is always what? It's always our people.
Well, yeah. I hope if you've been watching or listening, you take this last like 25 to 30 minutes and maybe watch it again and really let everything that Coach Diaz is talking about sink in, because that is exactly the way forward. We're going to transition, and Coach will kind of close with this. But we mentioned Coach Feely. Obviously, your friendship and relationship with him. We want to talk a little bit about the coaching staff. Kind of that's how we'll close today. And I guess what we're going to do is we're going to basically go down the list. But I think that to start us off, you retained a couple of coaches from the previous staff, and obviously once again you came in. You've mentioned it. Brian's mentioned it. To a unique situation where it wasn't. There were some viable assistant coaches, left to be retained if you wanted them. Right. So Zonberden, Harlenbauer, both are retained by you. What was it about those two guys that you identified that said, hey, these are my guys? What was it about those two?
I had a chance to interview everybody on the staff, and it was exciting how many people on the staff wanted to stay. And honestly, we could have retained just about everybody and plucked along in a great way. And I think that highly of the staff that was here. I think Zon and Harlan in particular, all the feedback I got from everybody I asked, inside the program, outside the program, as recruiters, was very, very high. I think it's always important to have some type of institutional knowledge on your coaching staff. So we don't come in and we're not making the same first year mistakes that maybe the last staff had. So we can kind of, pick up. And again, because if the whole point was to try to build on top of the success of the last 2 years instead of try to maintain or, whatever. I think to have some guys like that had understood it, were key. And so I think their level of respect from the players, the level of respect from the coaches, the high school coaches, was so high that I felt very, very comfortable with both those guys, continuing on the pathway to get Duke where we want to go.
One thing that we both on the Section 17 podcast and of course the Durham Devils Club, what we try to do is give people more of a inside look with assistant coaches that you might not see off the field, I guess you could say, get to know them more as well as the players. So just brief, just behind the scenes, each coach that you brought in. We try to give folks a little inside access, especially on the DDC. I mean, looking at the list, you brought in Jonathan Brewer from SMU, Jonathan Padkey from Texas State. You had some guys follow you from Penn State. Just going down the list, just give us a few brief details about each coach and what they bring to the table as we get ready for the 2024 season.
Absolutely. So I'm a big believer in alignment. I think alignment wins. So if I mentioned in the last part of the conversation about university alignment, that the most aligned universities win, well, I believe the same thing with coaching staffs. I think the great thing about college football, you can see there's so many ways schematically to win. If you looked at Michigan and how Michigan played, it's very different than how Washington played, which is different than how, Ohio State plays. It just, everybody's got their own style, which is great. It's why I think people like to come and watch the games. But the only teams that win are the ones that are fully devoted to one style and to one way. So I think it's very important that putting a coaching staff together, it's not fantasy football. You're not just like a team. It's not just the 10 most talented guys or the 10 best resumes. It's a 10 guys that fit together the best with our vision on how to win. So in my mind, the way I put it together is that obviously having a defensive background, I knew already what the defense is going to look like. So I'm going to put that just on the shelf just for a second, and we're going to start on offense. As a defensive coach, what I know is we play a lot better defense when we have a quarterback on offense, right? Just football is not a complicated game. It helps to have a quarterback, right? Well, where do quarterbacks want to go? They want to go in a system, okay, that maximizes their talent and maximizes their skills and gets them to throw for a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns, especially, by the way, now in the era of the portal where you can attract quarterbacks. So at Miami, Rhett Lashley was our offense coordinator my last years at Miami, and we with two very, very different styles of quarterback, one who just got thrusted into duty as a redshirt freshman, had two guys put up humongous numbers with two very different playing styles. And so what I do as a head coach is I sit in the quarterback meetings every day because I spend most of my time with the defense. But what I do with the offense is I sit in the QB meetings, listen to the practice corrections, the instructions, the game plan, the scouting report, everything. And that's what gives me a full understanding of what's going on both sides of the ball. So I was in a room with Johnny Brewer for my last 2 years at Miami. And, Rhett Lashley does a great job. And Johnny Brewer is like a mini me of Rhett Lashley. They are so aligned in terms of how they think about the game. And so for me, I had a front row seat. And I mentioned this a lot. I think you interview for your job, not on the interview. You interview their job every day of your life. And so seeing Johnny and how he works and how intelligent he is and how he thinks about the game and how he would sort of compliment Rhett and coaching our quarterbacks at Miami, I knew that he had a great mind. So I knew the offense, because I felt like what we were doing on offense at Miami was outstanding. And I knew that it was simple and it was easy to learn, which I also think is a big thing in the portal era. You can't wait. It can't take 24 months for a kid to feel really comfortable in an offense if you may have him for only 12 games, So I felt really good about Johnny coming in, and bang, we get Johnny. And then what happens? 10 days later, I think Malik Murphy comes, and I don't think the two are unrelated. So now where does alignment come in? The connection between the offense coordinator / quarterback coach and O-line coach has to be tremendous. So Johnny and Jeff Nord had worked with each other at Auburn. So then you do your homework on Jeff Nord. You speak to Gus Malzahn, who worked with him. You speak to Lane Kiffin, who worked with him at FAU and wanted to hire him at Ole Miss, and he checks all the boxes there. You spent 6 or 8 years with Saban at Alabama in various roles, so has been around a lot of great people. And then worked with Billy Napier at Louisiana, and same thing, got high marks there. So checked all the boxes. So blessed to bring Jeff on board. You keep Zahn, which keeps continuity and recruiting and that, which is huge. And then Willie Simmons. Willie was a guy who I worked with at Middle Tennessee, who I thought was a star. Went to FAMU and basically accomplished everything you could accomplish as a head coach at FAMU. Brings great experience as being a head coach. And will be a great mentor to our players and just a great asset to our staff. Really think we did a great job at that running back position and really feel great about it where we are there. And Justin Watts, who again talk about alignment. So Justin and Willie work with each other, both played at Clemson. Justin's done a phenomenal job recruiting North Carolina. Has been App State the last 9 years. Again, we work together at Middle Tennessee, so the type of humans you're getting, that these are great men, great coaches, ball coaches, and here for the right reasons. So I felt really good about how that offensive staff came together. Defensively, now same thing. Let's get an alignment with. We just had the number 1 defense in the country last year at Penn State. I already know what it's going to look like. So who can get into that room and get it to look like the way that we wanted it, that we built it at Penn State and all the other stops along the way. Well, Jonathan Packey and I have worked together for 8 years. He had a chance to be a defense coordinator at UIW. They had a lot of success there. They got hired at Texas State, go to Texas State. And it's funny, we'd go back and forth on text messages during the year because going the last couple of weeks of the season, they were number 1 in tackle for loss and we were number 2 at Penn State. And that was kind of upsetting me, Like, hey, come on, what's the big idea here? So we ended up finishing the year number 1 and 2 in TFLs, which shows the attack-minded philosophy that we're going to have and how we're going to play in other teams' backfield and create negative plays and create havoc. So knowing that I've got a guy who knows how I think, is a great teacher, is a tough human being, and the players have always responded really well to him. So I was really excited about bringing Jonathan here. So now, again, you mentioned keeping Harlan and what he does. So now let's go through the alignment. Gabe Infante, I heard Gabe Infante at Temple. Gabe Infante was a outstanding multiple time over state championship high school coach at St. Joe's Prep in Philly. He's super tied in from a recruiting aspect and anywhere from Philly to New York City, which would be a great area for us here at Duke. But he basically helped coach our defensive line at Penn State the last couple of years, and really helped transform that room, not just from a coaching standpoint, but just from getting those guys wired the right way and how he thinks. And he'll be our associate head coach as well because he's got great team understanding, great just understanding, and that's why I wanted him to be special teams coordinator because I just want him in front of our team. He's just so dynamic that he can affect all the rooms on our roster, not just the room of our defensive line. Rick Lister will coach our safeties. Rick was with me in Miami. Has worked at West Point, worked at Fordham, worked at Georgia Tech. So he's been around a lot of great people in a lot of great places. And then again was basically our assisting with our safeties the last years at Penn State. A bulldog of a worker, again from Jersey. He can do a lot of great recruiting for us up in the north. So really felt great about that. And then Viangelo Bentley we spent a spring together at Penn State when I first got there. And then Viangelo got hired away by Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And so one of the things I do in the summertime is I like to go visit Coach Belichick and spend a couple of days, up there for a mini camp. And so to be able to watch Viangelo coach on the NFL level, and then when I was filling out the staff, to be able to call Coach Belichick and get his opinions on Viangelo and how he had developed. If you want a powerful recommendation, I would say Bill Belichick is about as strong as they come, and Bill was very, very complimentary to Viangelo as a coach. So again, a guy who already knows the defense, understands the system, and then they didn't win many games at New England this past year, but that's not because of the defense. They were lights out on defense this past year, and obviously you see Gerard Mayo getting the head coaching job at New England as a testament to how great they were on defense. So Viangelo had a big part in that. So again, I think both staffs came together great. And I'll kind of close this by the best compliment that I've had is on these first couple of recruiting weekends that we've had. The parents have come up to me and they're like, wow, it feels like your staff has been together for years. I can't believe that they're all just getting to know each other. And that's what you want to hear. And a lot of that is because they are great people, that they get along. And whether they know it or not, they were selected because they're all like-minded people, not clones and not yes men, but people who believe in the same things and share the same values, and are all excited to be at Duke.
Let me ask you real quick about Coach Infante. My man has the look, like the face, right, of just like a movie, an actor or something, man. This guy is like, is there something in his past, man? Does this guy got something that's just like, I don't know what it is about him, man. When I saw a picture of him, like, that dude's a football coach. Like that guy's legit.
He's like the world's most interesting man. You know what I mean? He's the type of man you want to send your son to play for. And again, his success as a high school coach, and Jess Simpson was a phenomenal coach here at Duke the last couple of years. Jess and I are very close. Jess's first job on the field was on my staff at Miami, as when I was DC down there at Miami, and Jess's first year, I think we led the nation in TFLs down there. So, I've always been a believer that there are phenomenal high school coaches that just haven't had their shot at the next level. And that's why it was ironic. So I hired Gabe at Temple, but then obviously the Miami thing kind of pulled me back down there, and Gabe stayed on at Temple staff. But we, as fate would have it, we got to be together the last couple of years at Penn State. And now I couldn't feel like there's a better person to coach our big guys on defense than Gabe.
Well, Coach, it is crazy that we've been talking for an hour already. It's been a great conversation, and we know you're a busy man, but we really thank you for your time. One last question before we let you go. Obviously, this is for the Durham Devils Club, and we've asked pretty much everyone this question ever since we've started these interviews. But what is your ask, not only to current subscribers, but maybe those who are on the fence? They get access to seeing this episode. What is your message to them, your ask to them, both subscribers and potential subscribers?
I think, as I mentioned before, but maybe to say it more succinctly, I think to understand that timing is everything. I really feel like I'm not only at the right place, but I'm at the right place at the right time. And we have never been in an era of more volatility in college football. And growth happens in areas of discomfort. And we're in a very uncomfortable time right now. And I understand, I recognize that people are getting pushed a little bit past their comfort zone with what we're doing here with the DDC. And I recognize that. And again, I'm very humble to be the recipient, but I will tell you, I have been asked more times in 6 weeks at Duke, what do I need to do to help, than I was asked in 6 years at Miami. So I feel the pride and the passion that our community has for Duke, the university, the athletic department, athletic programs, and football. And so what I would say is, are you ever wrong investing in people? Right? And if they were bad people, if you didn't know who they were, I'd get it. But I'm here because of the kids in this locker room. I told the kids at the very first meeting, I chose to coach you. And that's hard, right? Because when a coach leaves, it feels like they were abandoned, right? And I get it. I left a great group of kids in that defensive locker room at Penn State. But really, can you go wrong investing in our guys, into our players? It's great to have nice things. But you win with, Bobby Bowden told me this a long time ago. You win with the right people, properly led. It's my responsibility to take care of the properly led part. It's all of our responsibility to make sure that we have the right people. And we can do that here. We can attract great people here. We've seen that from a recruiting standpoint already. And we're unique, and we can capitalize on that uniqueness right now to set us apart from the rest of what's going on in college football. And we don't have to worry about, prima donnas coming in here every day and wanting to renegotiate, and kids that are in it for the wrong reason and just always looking for, the bigger paycheck. That's not our people. That's not who we are here. So we just have to make them feel valued and make them feel taken care of. And we're not far off from doing that. We're really not. So thank you to everybody that's already doing. For those that aren't, that are on the fence, I think if you take that step, I don't believe that you will be disappointed. Because, again, when you watch the guys run out of the tunnel on the last Friday in August, you're going to see you, because that's what it is. It's you. The people are you now, not just the building and not the nice things we have, but it's the people. And the more we feel that, I think the more connected we'll all become.
Awesome. You can't go wrong investing in people. And so you can't go wrong investing in people. Coach Diaz, thank you for being on with us today. We know we'll be seeing more and more spring practice gets rolling around, and spring game coming up in April and things like that. But we really appreciate your time coming on and talking with the DDC today.
Josh, Brian, it's been a pleasure. And look, this is not one of those things where it's like, oh, here's an extra thing to do as a head coach. This is what we have to do. This is as important as talking to the team. This is important as talking to the coaches. I mean, we are all on this call. We are all the team. That's the new normal on college ball, right? I mean, we can't do it without anybody, and so it's fun to hopefully make everyone feel a part of something really special.
Well, thank you for tuning into this off-season episode of the Durham Devils Club podcast for Brian Kennedy. For the other two guys from Section 17 who couldn't be on today, Scott Medlin and Jamie Holt, I am Josh Cox, and thank you so much for listening to the Durham Devils Club podcast.